Hello, darlings, and welcome to my podcast, Treading the Boards to Business, where we talk all things from sparkle and spotlight to the boardroom and beyond. My name is Shelley Otway-Wood, former actress, singer and dancer, and now CEO of Stepping Out Stars of Tomorrow Theatre School, The Costume Cupboard, and Dance and Performing Arts Business Coach. I am going to share with you some fantastic showbiz stories with my friends and colleagues about their careers in performing arts and beyond. So let's open these curtains and step into the spotlight. Hello, darling. How are you?
I'm not too bad, thank you. You?
Oh, do you know what? I love seeing you because every time I see you, you've got a different hair colour.
I will be going. I've got about 10 days left and it's going, it's changing again.
Oh, I literally can't keep up with your hair colours. Like, honestly, and every single one, you totally rock.
Oh, bless you, thank
And
you.
there's me
Yeah, it's all
still
going
with my
again.
long, brown, boring hair.
It's not boring, it's whatever you rock. It's my little what do I call it? It's my little way of expressing myself, I guess. Like, and you can tell where I'm at in my own seasons of like where the hair's going. So yeah.
I love that. Well, welcome today to Treading the Balls to Business. This is one of my brand new podcasts. So I'm really excited to have you on as one of my first guests. So I'm going to cut straight to the chase and talk about kind of your dance training and how, because and talk to us about the butterfly mind and how that became such a huge part of your life, from this tiny little seed into this huge garden of beautiful tulips. It's just lovely. So talk to us a little bit about your training, because I know you went to drama school and there was some issues and stuff there. Obviously, we don't want you to discuss anything you don't want to. That's absolutely fine. But I know that
No, it's
that's
fine.
kind of why you've kind of created this beautiful company.
Yeah. Yeah, so I started dancing when I was 2.5, nearly three. Obviously just in my local dance school down in Portsmouth. My mum was a dance teacher, so obviously, the house was always full of music and dancing and choreography and that kind of thing. So I think I was just born into following her footsteps.
Was your mum
My
a dancer
childhood,
as well, or?
yeah, she did dance. She was actually in the movie version of The Boyfriend with Twiggy.
Oh,
So
wow.
she was a dancer in that as well. So, now and again, like I can watch that film and I can see my mum, come alive, so to speak, bless her.
Oh,
So,
that's so
yeah,
lovely.
so she started her own career, but then sadly, not sadly, I don't know, however she took that, she then got pregnant with my brother. And, she was only sort of like in her, well, I think she was 20, 21. So she was quite young. And then I think she quickly realized that she wasn't going to be able to have the dance career she wanted. 3 years later, I came along, and I do remember actually when I was probably around about 4 or 5, she was doing a lot of her own teacher training to kind of go up to another level of teaching. And I remember her doing all of that side of things, following her around and watching her in her own classes. So I think from a very, very young age, she was and always has been and always will be my biggest inspiration. And she was an incredible teacher. So I took a lot from watching my mum. She never taught me. We tried that, I think, when I was about 11 for maybe like half an hour. And then we were like, this is not going to work.
Yeah,
Um,
my little girl
yeah,
is it's not, it doesn't work. It never ever does.
no,
And I sometimes see these posts on the Dance Teacher Hub and things of like, what is it like when you teach your own child? It's a nightmare. They're badly behaved.
yeah. I think there was the whole sort of sentiment around like when if she tried to correct me, and this is like obviously in classes, like she did teach me on the odd occasion for show work, like if I was in a show piece. So that's the only time we actually. But I know as a child, I remember thinking like if she corrected me, she was picking on me. And if she didn't correct me, well, she was ignoring me. So she couldn't win, bless her heart.
She
But
couldn't
I think
win.
I think that's a natural thing. I've spoken to a lot of people that have either taught their kids or were the child of a dance teacher, and they've said the
Yeah,
same sort of thing. So I think it's a normal response. But
yeah.
no, my dance school, it was great. It was a really lovely family feel. Everybody knew everyone, had a really good close-knit, friends. My my teacher, the principal, Miss Mary, I mean, she was an amazing woman. I absolutely adored her. But we're going back to the 80s when we
Yeah.
didn't know better. We're going back to the days where there was always a cigarette burning on top of the piano in an ashtray. You know, could you imagine that today?
I
Wow.
know.
Um, there was a little kind of stick that she would tap on the back of your
I was
legs?
gonna, do you know what was the first thing I was gonna say to you? Did she have a stick? Because yeah,
Yes, of course she did.
crazy.
And she had the longest, pointiest fingernails that I still joke that I have indentations under my glutes to this day, from where she'd be like, get your leg higher, and she'd be like digging that nail under your glutes. But I adored her. She inspired me. She motivated me. But when I look back now with my knowledge, now in hindsight is a wonderful thing. I understand that the language choices back there, some of the methods probably weren't the healthiest. We
Yeah.
were in an era where we didn't know better. Um, but she celebrated me, she supported me, and then I went off to dance college at 16,
Where did you
which
train?
I trained at Performers in Essex
Okay.
because obviously they got
Yep.
the Birmingham campus now. But and this is going back to Brian Rogers'
Brian
days.
Rogers. Yeah,
He was
yeah.
there, I remember my very first day at college, and I remember being in the studio, and we were all the first years, and I think to myself, God, I thought I was such a grown-up girl, and I'm like, God, I look at some of my students that are 16 going, oh my
Yeah.
God, you're so baby-like, you're so
They're
little.
so yeah.
Moving away from home, and I remember the first day, Brian said to everyone, put your hand up if you were the best dancer at your dance school. And everybody just kind of sat there, like eyeballing each other, like who's going to put their
Who's
hand
going
up
to
and
do it
declare
first?
that? Who's going to declare that? And he was like, no, 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 be honest. You could see kind of people going, like, is this safe to say? And obviously everybody's hands were up. We were at college, right?
Of
And he
course.
said, that's lovely, but none of you are the best right now. And I remember kind of everybody going, oh,
Mm,
okay.
mm.
It was the most humbling sentence I think I've ever had said. Now, I was never one to be very cocky or very kind of, showing off because that was my mum's grounding. She kept me very grounded. I was so fortunate to start working professionally at the age of 9, did a couple of TV
Wow, okay.
commercials. I did some West Ends on tour. And I started doing pro pantos every year, like with big name stars. So I was very, very lucky to start working at a very young age.
Yeah.
Again, now I also understand the damage that was done from a very young age. But going to college, obviously, you're in an environment where comparison was very rife. That perfectionism driver, which I had a tendency to already have from a very young child, from quite an adverse childhood with my dad. So that perfection driver was already very clearly instilled in me. So going
Yeah.
to dance college, that was my driving force I had to be perfect.
And
Um,
it was very much, those people who are listening into this, our generation of dancers was very much the coffee, the cigarette, and you didn't eat. There was
oh
very
gosh,
much that, wasn't there?
yeah,
It was,
absolutely.
I remember like auditioning at Pineapple and having auditions there, and everyone. I mean, I never smoked, but everybody being outside having a cigarette and a coffee, and that's what got you through the day, and you didn't eat
Yep.
anything.
Yeah.
So
And that was still very, very prevalent back at college. Like I did smoke. Don't do it, listeners. It's bad for you. But I did smoke, like, and I smoked to suppress my hunger.
Mm.
And I remember obviously my weight was one of the biggest factors when I was at college. I'm, I look back like we all do. I look back at a photograph of me at the age of 16, 17, 18, and I kind of go, gosh, I wish I looked like that now. But at
Don't
the
we
time,
all?
I didn't have an appreciation for my body back then. I just saw it as a weapon or just saw it as I became very disconnected from my body. And it was
But you're
just a machine
naturally
that I
very
had to
slim.
fuel.
You're naturally, are you, do you have to really watch what you eat now, or you're just naturally very skinny
Absolutely.
thin?
Absolutely, I have to. So my mum had, it's very bizarre. I literally just have got, and again, I advocate therapy. I've literally just come out of my therapist session. And we've been talking about this morning because obviously I'm fully into menopause, having just had a hysterectomy. So I've been thrust into full menopause literally overnight. So my body's doing some crazy things. But I grew up watching my mum being a yo-yo dieter because of her own hang-ups around her body. And obviously, again, I think a lot of that came from being in the dance industry when she was younger.
Yeah.
So that kind of mentality, that pattern followed suit to me. And my mum was very conscious of me being careful of what I ate when I was young. We've got typical English pear shapes. So I'm very small up top, but I have wider hips. Now, even as a young dancer at 16, 17, I wasn't big. I wasn't big at all, but I had a shape. and I had
Yeah.
hips that were wider than the norm. So that was picked up on. So I was, oh, probably at least once a term, pulled up into the office, weighed, told to speak to the nutritionist. The focus was always about what I looked like and never about my talent. Um, and I think, I mean, this podcast could go on for hours if I really
Yeah.
kind of went into it. So
Absolutely.
I'll
Yeah.
try and
Yeah.
keep
Yeah.
it short. But, there was so much focus, not just on me, but so many of us dancers. There was dancers that I know that had eating disorders. I've always had a very, very unhealthy relationship with food. And I've had my own kind of eating disorder in a way, not that people would physically look at me, but my disordered understanding around food. And that's something I still have to manage today, that's always impacted me. So I think, that constant sort of, shaming, I guess, if you want to call it for want of a
Mm.
word, at college, um, my self doubting was there. The negative headspace was always around what I looked like. So, but that wasn't, I want to say that it wasn't started at college. It started when I was younger. My mum, as I say, she was very kind of conscious of what I was eating. So I'd already started thinking about my weight, my body, probably from the age of about 10, I think, which is when your body's just starting to change
And that's
anyway.
such a hard
So,
age I
oh,
mean, my little girl's 13, and going through that kind of time with her, she really ballooned during that time. And
yeah,
I'm fat, and yeah, you're not, but trying to explain to an 11, 12-year-old that they're
hard.
not fat, this is just part
Yeah,
of growing up, and you almost grow out to then grow back up again, and that
absolutely.
happens.
And we probably see it in the students we teach. I see it a lot. You see the generations come through, and all of a sudden they grow out, and then you come back after summer, and you're like,
What happened to
what happened
you?
to
Yeah.
you? Do you seem
What
to have
did you
grown
eat over
back?
the summer?
Yeah. And then it's only then you have a little bit of compassion for your younger self, for you to kind of think, God, that's what happened to me. But because I think I'd been working from such a young age, it'd been always under the spotlight, literally, about how you look. So going to college and then having that from multiple sources, and then, just I mean, one quick story I will share. I got the opportunity to perform on, you'll remember this, talking telephone numbers
Oh,
with
I do.
Mr. Schofield. Yeah, so that was one of the jobs that I got. I mean, there was other jobs that I did, like Big Breakfast. What else did we do? Oh, Mr. Motivator. So I did a
Brilliant.
lot of TV work like that. But I went and did the talking telephone numbers, and we'd learned the choreography, we'd done the rehearsals, turned up for like a screenshot just to test the screening, and then got cut. And the words that were used when I got cut was, "The camera puts £10 on you." And I was like, wow.
Wow. Yeah.
So in that moment, again, it was just clarification that you're too fat to be a dancer, because I can't put you on TV because the camera makes you look bigger than you already are. So it was just another confirmation that just sat there. So then going into the industry, it didn't get any easier. It was just as hard. And this is where I think you know me well enough to know that I don't like sugarcoating things. I'm not going to make it a horror story. It
Yeah.
is a beautiful industry. There's so many positives from it. But there is also this element that is still there that a lot of us are trying to kind of gloss over. We're trying to
Yeah.
sugarcoat it. And I don't want to do that. I want the light to be shed on it. But I went into the industry, and then, one particular contract on a cruise ship, and we were weighed in front of each other. We were stripped down
Yeah.
to our
I've had that as
underwear
well.
and put
I've
on
had that on contracts.
scales.
Yeah.
And it would be a case of, oh, Kim's put a pound on this week. Who ate all the pies? And you'd be like, I'm on my period. Like, I'm so sorry that I've got a bit of fluid retention, or, and it was just things like that, this constant shaming all the time. And that's lived with me throughout. And I think when I then obviously stopped being a performer, for various reasons. I had a bad experience on one contract, as well as I was injured. It was just the right time for me to kind of go, I'm coming home. And then I started working as a choreographer, and then I got very, very ill. That was the first time I was extremely unwell, to the point that I nearly didn't make it. And that's the start of a lot of my health issues.
Yeah.
So I stopped performing professionally. I continued as a singer, but as a dancer, I stopped performing professionally. And then eventually, many years later of working in different companies as a singer and executive for a big company, then I found myself going, I really feel like I want to teach. And that was never something that I ever envisaged me doing.
Yeah.
I think I saw my mum doing the late nights, all the things that I know we still talk about
Mhm.
today,
Yeah.
and the lack of social time and the amount that you give to people, but you never
Yeah.
really get back. And yeah, so it was hard work. So I think I'd always kind of had this image that I'm never going to be a teacher. And then I did some cover work, or actually, no, it was a workshop that I delivered for someone just for fun. And I thought, I really enjoyed that. Maybe I'll go into teaching. So it was sort of tickling my brain. And then sadly, I lost my mum in 2009 in a quite devastating way. We were on holiday together, and when I say she dropped down dead, literally, like that's literally just what happened. She just had a
Okay,
massive
that's
heart
so
attack and
sad.
we lost her. We had 45 minutes of going, I don't feel very well, to her being gone. So it kind of ripped my world apart. Um,
Yeah. How old were
and
you
it
when that happened?
devastated. I was literally 4 days before my 30th birthday.
So
So
sad.
she was only 53, so she was really young herself. So it kind of ripped my world apart. And with that came a lot of other challenges with my dad, who was, an alcoholic. So obviously I had to look after him. So that proposed a lot of challenges. Me and my husband were living in Spain at the time with my mum and dad, not far from them. And then after I lost my mum, I said, I want to go back to England. I can't be here. I need to go back and start afresh. And that's when I found myself going, I really want to teach. So I went back into teaching, got all my qualifications up to scratch. And then through another life-changing moment, I then sort of took a step away from teaching for multiple schools and went, I think I want to do it myself. So
Yeah.
I opened up my own school 13 years ago. And then I think from that, I really started reflecting a lot on my time of being a dancer, and I wanted to make sure that I gave my kids an experience that wasn't going to mirror a lot of the negativity that I'd experienced. I wanted to make sure that it was a place that reflected positivity and body, and there was no shaming. There was no kind of old motivational language that I know is not motivational. So I think I became a teacher that was very mindful about how I spoke to children, how I used the space to be really supportive and nurturing. And then it was actually during 2017, I did the NSPCC Child Protection Safeguarding course. And as I was going through the course, I started doing each module, and it's quite intense. And
Yeah, I've done that. It
it's
is
really quite
intense.
hard to watch some of
Yeah.
the videos. And with every module, a Pandora's box in my mind was opening, and I was like, that was me as a child. That was me as a child. And all of the stuff that I'd experienced in my family household came tumbling out. And then I had a breakdown. And from that
Mm.
breakdown, I hit my lowest point ever, the darkest place you can imagine. From that, I started therapy. Through the last 8 years of being in therapy, and I will never quit because she keeps me sane,
Mhm.
um, I uncovered so much of what I blocked and suppressed. And it was then that I gained this passion for actually, whilst dance and the industry was a catalyst for a lot of my self-doubting and negativity, it saved my life. Because
Mhm.
being in the dance studio as a child, I was out of my house, I was safe. It was the one place that I felt that I belonged. I was able to express everything, and every word and emotion that I could not speak came out of my body, and I allowed myself to talk loudly through my body and my movements in that dance studio. And then I realized that's why dance has been my driving force my entire life and my passion, because as a kid it saved me. Then I started looking at my own students and going, how many of you right now am I potentially saving by being in my studio?
Yeah, and that's so true. The impact we have as children's
Oh,
activity entrepreneurs is huge, isn't it? It's not just a case of let's open a school and let's hope everybody comes. There is so much behind the scenes, like like you spoke about
absolutely.
earlier. There really, really is.
Yeah.
And
And I
so
think when you
when
do this, sorry, go
no,
on.
no, 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 you go ahead.
I was thinking when you do the statistics as well, which is a really shocking statistic, but and I don't want to trigger anyone, obviously, who's listening to this, but what I experienced in my household, 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 7 boys experience. So when I had a class in front of me and I had maybe like 20 kids in front of me, all girls, I would do the math and I'd be like, there's potentially like 5 girls in this room that are either are experienced or have experienced what I experienced in my house. And that's what really shocked me into going, I have to do more. I need to do more in this space to make these girls and boys even safer than I can make them right now.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so did you obviously did all your qualifications and your school was very successful and you ran shows
Yeah.
and exams
Hmm.
and all stuff like that. How did you suddenly go, do you know what? I love my school, but I feel this need, almost like a pull
Mm,
into a slightly different direction because I've seen and I've witnessed that. I've seen, obviously I met you a couple of years ago at a business conference and I've seen you go little kind of seed of an idea into this huge, complete career
yeah,
change, you know?
yeah, massive turnaround. So it was actually during lockdown when I started to pivot and started to think about doing something different. Like I said, I think I've always had this natural instincts to want to do more for kids, and I think that feeds back into my own, as I say, my own childhood in the dance industry. Um, so I think during lockdown, I witnessed a lot of my what I call my kids that would always show up with their hair in a bun. They would always show up in the correct uniform, on time, ready to go, passionate. And they started like that on lockdown, in lockdown on Zoom, like most of our kids did.
Mhm.
And then over a period of a few weeks, they started to wane and they would show up in a pair of tracky bottoms with their hair just hanging down. Like they didn't, it was almost like they'd lost the will to kind of motivate
Yeah.
themselves. And that was a worldwide issue. That wasn't a my school issue. This was just the kids were being overstimulated by being on the Zoom all day long with school and then having to dance in their little tiny living rooms. Or, I had a kid that I still joke to this day that she tapped on a wooden chopping board. A normal standard size chopping board, because her mum was like, "You're not tapping on my parquet flooring or lino, whatever it was." She's got the most amazing close work footwork you've ever seen because she tapped for like a year and a
Yeah.
half on a
I mean,
chopping board,
those times were crazy. I remember
Oh, it was
myself and Rob
mental.
going round with ply boards to all of our students and leaving them
Yeah,
outside. I mean,
yeah, it was
anybody that
crazy.
ran a theatre school or a dancing school during that time will
Oh,
completely empathize with us
it
because
it tested our creativity
it did.
beyond massively.
Yeah.
I mean, my conservatory, I'm very lucky. I've got a beautiful big conservatory. That became my home studio. And sadly, my husband was working in his job away in Scotland. And it was like a 7.5 hour drive. And we couldn't get, when we went into that first lockdown, it was very quick. We couldn't get to each other. So we actually spent nearly 6 months apart.
Oh my
And
goodness, I didn't know
Yeah, so
that. That's awful.
I was at home on my own and he was at home in his workplace because he had to stay there. He was there on his own. So we had FaceTime and that was all we had. So my mental health hugely dipped. Not only just because obviously we were teaching on Zoom, and I stupidly at the time didn't change my timetable and minimize it. I literally just took my entire timetable and put it on Zoom. So on a Saturday, I taught from 9 o'clock till 4:30, non-stop, going in from one Zoom room to the next Zoom room to the next
We did
Zoom
the
room.
same. It was,
And it was exhausting telling the
yeah.
kids, like, guys, turn your cameras on. Okay, mute yourself. You're unmuted. You spoke non-stop for hours. And I remember getting so probably about 6, 7 weeks into it. And I remember sitting on the floor. I had this huge screen in the conservatory with my laptop connected up, and there's the music connected up, and my tap mat and the banner in the corner. And I remember sitting there at about 10 to 9 on one morning in floods of tears. I was exhausted. I was mentally unwell in a
Yeah.
really dark place. And I clicked on, I was like, "Morning, kids, how are we all?" And I remember finding myself on the kitchen floor. Literally, I was making a cup of tea and I remember sinking down to my knees and just sobbing. I was exhausted and my mental health took a huge dip. But I recognized that my kids were doing the same. And I thought, I can't hit rock bottom again. I have a duty to make sure that these kids, because straight away my head went to, they can't escape their houses right now. And
Yeah.
I thought to myself, could I imagine my 7, 6, 8 year old self being stuck in my house and not being able to get out? The terror that brought across me. So I thought, no, I've got to do something. So I started doing things differently on my Zoom lessons. It wasn't always about the dancing. I started talking to the kids. I started doing just some gentle kind of like reflection work with them. And I started throwing questions back at them, like, well, how does that make you feel? And when I suddenly started seeing them become alive again, and I witnessed this whole transition of kids would get excited to see me again on Zoom because I wasn't just going to teach them another time step combination or the next part of their amalgamation. I started to see them
And
as little
listen.
humans as that were struggling. And some lessons, we didn't even dance. We sat and talked. And I was like, do you know what? Does it matter? And then from that, I had a couple of parents that reached out to me saying that some of their kids were really struggling. Like, would you be able to give them like a one-to-one? And I'm like, absolutely. Like, if I can help, and I never charged the parents, I was like, I'll do half an hour. And if we just jump on FaceTime and just, or Zoom and just talk. And I had a few kids that I would just give basically, I guess, like one-to-one chatting
Yeah, almost like a
sessions.
counseling session, yeah?
Basically, yeah. That is when I suddenly went, I need to do this more. There's
Yeah.
something in this. So I started to really look at how dance saved me and why. And then I started reading up more about, I don't know if you're really aware of somatic therapy.
No.
So somatic therapy is basically what all dance teachers do, unknown to them. So somatic therapy is where we release like the tension, the stress, the anxiety, traumas that are instilled and stored within our body, and we release them through movements, repetitive movements. So you can go to somatic therapy work. I don't know if you've ever seen videos where they do like the breathing techniques and you see people literally sobbing their hearts out
Yeah, yeah.
because they're using the breath control. It's very similar, but with range of movement. So your hip flexors are one of the most obvious places that we store big traumas. So if you
Yeah.
do certain movements, it releases like emotions that you're like, why am I crying? Well, it's just a way of releasing it. We do that for kids in our dance classes without even knowing we're doing it, which is why I love to say to dance teachers, think about time when you go in to teach and you've had a really, really bad day and your body's tense and you feel in a bad mood. But by the end of the evening, we feel so much better.
Yeah.
Why is it? We've moved that trauma, we've moved that anxiety, we've moved that stress out of our body. So I started reading up about this. Then I got so in depth of reading different psychology books. And then I started training through lockdown to become an NLP practitioner, which is
Okay.
neuro linguistic programming.
Yeah.
Then I got my level 2 counseling skills. And then from there, I've just invested more and more about how can I learn more about the psychology of how movement is so impactful to help children to regulate their nervous system and their emotions. And then from there, I just obviously got this idea of like, I want to teach this to other people. So the butterfly mind kind of was started, I guess, was born from doing it naturally. But then I was like, I want this to be shared outside of my dance school. And then I really started thinking about language and the language we use. And words and language has always been a passion of mine without me knowing it. When I was a child, my escapism from my traumas was to write poems and to write songs and to write creative stories because it was an escapism for me. And I realized how growing up, things like the bruises, things like the physical traumas, or even like the sore muscles, they will all go, they will heal, but the mental words never did.
Yeah.
So that's when I really got into how we talk to children. So from all that, I had this real, I guess it was a bit of an epiphany, like
Epiphany, yeah.
I need to share this with the dance world. I need to do more. So that was a bit of a long-winded story, but there's so much more to it. But that's obviously without going into, because we'd be here for hours. But that really is my journey, I guess, from me starting to dance to recognizing what it did for me, how I could then help other students to then going, there's more to this, and I need to create something to share that with the world. And that's
Yeah,
where the
and
butterfly
we
mind was
had
born.
you, Kim, come into Stepping Out, and it was an incredibly powerful weekend. So we
Mm,
had you come in, and you delivered a beautiful workshop for us. And some of the students talked about the way that perhaps they'd been at other schools and didn't have the same ethos as like myself and yourself. And teachers who were fat shaming and name calling and things like that,
yep.
which was an incredibly powerful weekend. More than I would ever really have imagined. I didn't do it as a box ticking exercise at
Mm,
all, getting you in, but I just thought, oh, that would be nice for the school. I'll be honest, like that's kind of the depth it went to. But the impact it had on my school that weekend when you came in was above anything I would have really imagined. It was really, really lovely. And it wasn't just about, again, like you said, when you were on the Zoom calls with your students, it wasn't just about the dancing and the movement side. It was about kind of almost training their inner belief
Yeah.
and their inner strength, which
Hmm.
was beautiful to see. It really was.
Yeah. It is a powerful workshop that I do with the students. And I think, it's got to the point now, we're nearly 4 years old now with the butterfly mind. I started in April 2022. And my first main workshop, I think, was the September of 22, because obviously I launched it and just kind of started to get my name out there. And from that very first workshop, I don't think I've ever done a workshop with students that nobody's not cried. And it's almost kind of like my husband now, because he quite often comes with me because I have to do quite long journeys depending where I'm going up and down the country. And he jokingly says to me now, like he said, "Oh, did you make them cry again today?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I did." But it's not, I don't go in there actively looking to
No,
make these kids cry. But I think the work that I do with them, and again, because they're feeling their bodies, they're being so present. And I do such powerful reflection work, which is my biggest tool, I think, that I use. I allow them to look inward rather than just layering more facts, layering more information on them, asking them to do something or say something. I'm asking them, what do you feel? How do you want to see yourself? And I think it's about resilience and building that internal resilience that I think is not taught enough. So I think, and then doing some of the movement stuff that I do with them, there is that somatic work that releases the traumas, the stress, the anxiety. And it doesn't have to be, we're not talking about big T's, big traumas. We're talking about small traumas as well, things that as an adult we'd think a friendship group breakup is like, oh, it's just a friendship group. But that's
at that
massive to
age, it
them.
is.
It's
It really
huge to
is.
them.
Yeah.
So it's a big trauma to them if they have a friendship breakup with their best friend of 6 years or whatever. So they carry that in their little bodies. So moving it is really powerful. So I think seeing that with the kids, that's when I was like, this is really powerful work. And then I quickly realized I got so many bookings in that first year, and it was amazing. And I quickly realized there's a lot of kids and only little old me. So I was like, how can I get this work to expand even more? Other
I
than
mean, I
taking on,
actually thought at some point, sorry to cut in, Kim, but
no,
I actually thought at some point, how is she managing her school and doing all of these at the
mm,
weekends and all over the country?
well,
I mean, she must
yeah,
be,
that's a very different story. Yeah, I
yeah,
didn't. Is a
yeah,
word. I don't think I did. I'm very good at masking. I'm very good at suppressing emotions, feelings myself. That's my I say that's my sort of learned behavior from being, in the adverse sort of environment as a child. You learn to kind of disengage from your body. So I think I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I'm a workaholic. So I think I just dived into work and I managed. I quickly did realize though that if I had a workshop on a Sunday, I couldn't work on a Monday. And it was only through conversation with my own therapist that I understood that on a Monday, all of a sudden I started developing, and I'm not really one to have suffered with headaches, but after a workshop on a Sunday, I'd wake up on Monday almost like with a full hangover, physically, mentally, body, head. And I was like, why do I feel so awful on a Monday after doing a workshop on a Sunday? And it was only through a conversation with Heather, my therapist, that she said, like, what you're doing is you're actually opening up spaces and channels for those kids to physically dump their emotions in that room. And you're holding a safe space to
yeah.
gather it. And you literally absorb their emotions and you're coming away and you're not able to release it. So when I kind of started understanding and recognizing this pattern, workshop, next day, body hangover, I then had to put almost like a little cleansing thing in place for me. Now I do nothing the day after workshop. I have my own way of like meditating, releasing it out of my body, and I do my own sort of certain movements that I know can just release a little bit of tension. But the next day I'm pretty exhausted, and that still happens. But in a
I
way, I
think
kind of go, that's lovely.
yeah, I mean, that's something you need to do, isn't it? And
Yeah.
I think some of the things that you put on your Facebook about things really strike a chord with me because I think I'm very, very similar in the fact that I'm
Mm.
a real workaholic and, obviously was a dancer at a very similar time to you. Um, and I remember you saying something recently about resting and I was really, really tired. I'm not sleeping very well. I'm also going through menopause as well. And I was at this point and I was just so tired and I was like, I've got to go to work and oh my God. And I just thought, do you know what? What would Kim say? And this little Kim came into my head And I was like, Kim would say, you need to rest. You need to stop. And
Yeah.
that is something in our industry that we are almost not allowed to do.
Oh, this is
You
where you'll
know,
get me started on my soapbox.
yeah,
So
I
I think
mean,
those motivational words, like, the show must go on, that is a sentence that
Dr.
makes my blood
Footlights,
run cold.
I've spoken about this, and like I said to you, when you, hopefully our listeners will listen to the previous podcasts, but Kim's name's come up a couple of times in those in those podcasts about, how we speak to people and how those kind of impacts, those industry impacts, kind of impact us for ages.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? How those things do stay with you, and how you deal with that, not just as a child, but as an adult as well.
yeah,
But
yeah,
let's talk about how you've now moved into taking it to almost like another career change, but keeping
yeah.
everything together, with kind of partnership, the lovely Sophie, who's coming on in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. So, so I think over probably the last maybe year, 18 months, I had this little whisper in the back of my head. I think I knew with my own dance school, I'd had a lot of health problems in the last couple of years that, again, I'd kind of ignored. Had to get it sorted and then realized I had to have a full hysterectomy. So it's major surgery. And I think this time last year, I was really unwell. And I found myself hospitalized at one point, and rather than laying there with, drips coming out of everywhere, and resting, I was on my laptop sorting out my dance school. And
Yeah,
that is when it really hit me. And I was like, I can't, I can't keep doing this. I'm gonna kill myself if I carry on like this, or I'm gonna put myself back in that very, very dark place again.
yeah.
And I think I've shared on social media, again, to inspire other people to sit up and listen. A couple of years back, that me and my husband had a really rocky patch where he metaphorically slapped me around the face by saying he was done with our relationship, and it wasn't. He wanted me to wake up and realize that I was a workaholic, and I was going to put myself in a really unhealthy place if I wasn't aware that I was, working too much. So I shine a light on those situations as well for people. So I think it was a real recognition of, like, we're going down that dark path again, and I'm going to make myself extremely unwell if I don't stop. So I think working, like you said earlier on, how do you do the school and working the butterfly mind? Well, I think I did it for as long as I could, but then I had to make that choice. And I think you get to a certain age where you have to be really honest with yourself and you think, I'm done with one chapter, and that's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay to say that I don't have to stay here because it's what I've always done. And I had this passion for doing the work that I'm doing now, and I knew I had to step fully into that. So I made the decision last summer to sell my school, and that's now all gone and done and dusted. So I'm no longer the owner of my school. Um,
How did that feel? That must, because obviously, is it close to you in terms of proximity, or?
Well, actually, no, not really. I think because my two branches, one was 45 minutes away and one was an hour and a half away.
Oh goodness.
Again, just because of like life
Yeah.
changes and stuff like that. So I don't think people really appreciated, for me to get to work, I had to do an hour and a half drive to get there. And then I'd work all day and then an hour and a half drive to get
Get
home.
home.
And then on some occasions on a Friday evening, I'd get in at 10 o'clock and be out the door at 7 o'clock the next morning to go back to where I've just come from. So
Yeah.
doing that for 8 years, that also took its toll. So I really made the decision to step fully into doing this full time and really ramping it up. I'm doing a lot more teacher trainings. I'm doing so much more. I've got my own membership now where people can come in and learn strategies to how they can change their language, how they can be more mindful, so much more. And then just out of the blue one day, obviously I've known Sophie for, like yourself, for quite some years in the industry through the conferences.
Yeah.
Um, and she just said to me one day, are you able to jump on a quick call with me and Stacey? I didn't know Stacey at the time. She said, we've got a really exciting thing that we're doing, and we're opening up a brand new college, and we'd like to have a chat about how we can get you involved. And I was like, oh, curiosity. So I was like, yeah, I'd love to. And then as soon as we jumped on the Zoom call and started talking, I think it very quickly realized that there was more than just adding a little bit of, like, we'll do a little bit of like mental well-being work now and again, to then suddenly going, I'm literally going to create an entire curriculum to run alongside the BTEC course that
Wow.
will obviously, they're starting, so they're launching the college in September this year. We've done two audition days already. We've got another one on the 1st of March. So my role in that is basically writing a whole basically a curriculum to run alongside the BTEC course for 2 years, where they will be having a weekly lesson with me as a class. They will have a weekly lesson where I will obviously talk about all the work that I do with the butterfly mind, about comparison, perfectionism, body image, social media, how to keep themselves safe. Just basically giving them all the skills and the resilience that they're going to need if they decide to go into this industry. And to be fair, I just think as a human, like we need this as a human.
Yeah.
But then on top
Because
of that, there'll be
if you think about it, when we were dancing, there was no social media. There was there
absolutely
was
no.
there was none of that. You didn't even, I mean, going back to very quickly, just without kind of cutting too much back, but what you were saying about you were in hospital and you're on your laptop. I was in labour on the phone to parents, having gas and air, and phoning parents saying I'm in labour. I mean, who does that? Who does
I
that?
know. Yeah,
But that is kind of what we do because it's almost been ingrained in us, isn't it?
yeah,
And if you can change that perception of somebody who's 16, 17, 18, 19 years old when they're at drama school, how wonderful is that?
yeah. I feel like I've got this. I feel like I've got this. What's the word I'm looking for? Um, I have to tell people to look after them. I feel like I've got this need to kind of be the advocate to go, could you just not do the same things that I did? Don't make the same mistakes that I did. And then look, we have to make mistakes to learn from them as young
Yeah.
kids, and they're all going to make silly mistakes or whatever. But I think shining a light on the real devastating kind of effects it can have mentally and physically if you're not putting yourself at the top of the priority list, if you're not being aware. So
And
I
as a
think
business
that's
owner, that's something that always is the lowest of priorities, isn't
oh,
it? And that's something that I've tried to
absolutely.
change in my coaching. When I
Yeah.
take new students, new clients on, is to say, actually, okay, when was the last time you went to the gym or went for a walk or, spoke to a friend or went for a coffee or a drink, and
Yeah.
suddenly you realize that it's like 8 weeks and you haven't actually seen a friend. You've been at your laptop from 8 in the morning until 11, 12 o'clock at night. I mean, again, when I had Ayana, I was looking after her in the daytime and then in the evenings I was running the school. So I was, dropping her with a childminder and then I was having to then get back home after teaching to then go on and do all my admin until like 2 a.m. And I did that for like 18 months. And
Yeah.
you look back on it now and think that is mad behavior, but as business owners, this is what we do, isn't it?
It is, and I don't think it's just isolated to the dance industry. I think it is just business owners. I think when
Yeah.
you work for yourself, I had this conversation with one of my clients the other day saying about how when you're self-employed and you run your own business, it is very different because you don't have that ability to clock off. Your brain's still actively going, oh, I need to do that email. Oh my God, I didn't ring that parent. But this is what I teach now with clients. I teach them a way to get boundaries in place because I am so boundary led now. Like Monday is my non-negotiable day off, and it's my date day with my husband. For Christmas, I actually made him this little box of 52 paper hearts that were folded into like little mini envelopes, and in each one is a date. And each month we pull
Oh,
out
how
four and we put them
lovely.
in the diary. So like silly little things like this last week we had an evening where we bought some cheese, some meat and some olives and some wine and made a platter, and we pretended to be our own little food critics, and we gave certain things like a mark out of 10. We had a real good giggle.
Oh, I
But
love
I've
that, Kim. I love that
I've put
idea.
that in place because where I
Yeah.
was so unhealthy with my work relationship, and I'm really good now at 5 o'clock down tools. Whilst I've still got some clients that are on a big program with me, they've got access via WhatsApp till 8 o'clock in the evening. But come 8 o'clock, that's it. It's switched off. So I am really, really good boundary led now because I think it's time that I put myself back onto the priority. But this is what I want to teach these kids. I want them to go into the industry or in any industry that they go into and recognize that, and it's a powerful sentence I always use. You're the only person that spends your entire life with yourself from the minute you're born to the minute you leave this planet. Like you're not with anybody else 24/7 other than yourself. So
Mm.
if you're not kind to yourself and if you're not putting yourself first, you have to spend your life with you. So, you could do a lot of damage or you could do a lot of greatness. So I just want these kids to understand that you are the most important in your life. yes, you're going to meet a partner and have a husband or a wife and children, and they're going to be really important. But actually, it's not selfish to say, I'm the most important person because I have to be with myself 24/7. So if I'm
And
negative,
without yourself being healthy and happy, then you can't give to others, can you? You know,
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's that old saying of like, you can't pour from an empty cup, but it's really, really true.
yeah, it's
So I
true.
think teaching these young students to kind of go into the industry and say, you're going to hear things like the show must go on, no pain, no gain. I can't eradicate that. I mean, I'd love to think that with the work that I'm doing and hopefully over time, we will start removing those because the teachers that I'm teaching now, I'm hoping that I'm teaching them better language choices, that they won't use those sentences. So in a couple of generations' time, I'm really hoping we've done a good enough job that those languages have gone. But at the moment, I can't stop them going to a college or, into the industry and hearing, come on, the show must go on, because that's a generational thing that we've had for
It
years.
is.
What that teaches us is that it doesn't matter whether you're ill or injured, like you have to get on with it. Well, no. If your body's ill or unwell or you're injured, don't push yourself because then you're going to shorten your career. You potentially could
Yeah.
injure yourself even more. And it's getting these kids to
I
recognize
actually
that.
said on a podcast last week, and I can't remember who I was talking to. I think it might have been Emma. And I was saying, I actually did a contract where I actually broke my ankle in the contract
Me
on
too.
stage. Yeah, and then literally then went back on stage for the next number and did it. And there was sweat pouring off me, but I was like, well, I can't not do it. I can't not do it. I've got to go on, got to go on. And that
Yeah.
is so instilled in us, particularly as dancers. And you know what is something that I think I still do now, like as part of the business. I am much better at the boundaries and I do follow you on socials. And so I do
Mm.
take a lot of what you say and try and implement it. But, my husband would say I'm an absolute workaholic. I've struggled to switch off. And so, if that's embedded into students when they're 15, 16, 17, that what, after 5 o'clock, you need to rest. You've been here all
Yeah.
day, you've worked all day, that's your time, and
And
it's
also we've got to
different at
remember as
college,
well,
but
how many other industries do you like, if you worked in retail or if you worked in an office, you don't go home and take your work home with you.
no.
You don't take you don't take the shelves home with you and start stacking the shelves and doing, do you know what I
No.
mean? Like you don't do it. And even offices, all right, yes, depending if if you're a manager or you might kind of go, oh, I've got a couple of documents I've got to ping off tonight. But you're not actively sitting there going, oh, I need to put some social media out because we wear so many hats.
Yeah,
In most jobs, that is your job title, and that's your area. You're not going, oh, I need to get those figures over to my accountant. Oh, I need to do the social media. Oh, yeah, I've got to get a bit of marketing done. Oh, and that parent's ballet shoes need ordering. Like it's that constant carousel of thoughts that go round and round and round. And it's learning to when to kind of go, I need to switch that off. And dance teachers really struggle with that, which is why I
yeah.
teach the way that I teach with them to go, you got to learn to switch off and put
And I
methods
also
in
don't
place.
think people always understand how much we do. It was really, really interesting. I've just taken on a new admin lady in the office, and so I've done a complete Shelley, worked all day in the office, and then obviously going to the school. I don't teach anymore, but I just was going to the school to see the kids and check on teachers and things. And I went, right, okay, I better shut my laptop down because I've got to go to work. And she went, what do you mean you've got to go to work? And I said, well, I'm going to the school now. And she went, but you've done like 9 till 6 here, and then you're going to the school all evening. I was like, yeah. And she just couldn't get her head around that that's what we do. But it is what we do.
Yeah, I think people just see it as a dance teacher. You just turn up at 3 o'clock with your little stereo, put some music on, and skip around the room. And I think to myself, that would be joyous if that's all it was. But and I think even not just those that are running their own schools as a business, I think even freelance teachers, there's a lot for them as well that they are, and I always admire them because I think moving from school to school, you've got different values that you need to remember and different methods that you've got for that school. That school
Yeah.
does that way, and that school does it that way. And and you've got a lesson plan, and you like, especially if they're doing, oh, I've got a show at that school, but I've got exam work at that school. Like it's a lot for them as well. So I think
Yeah.
yes, they don't have the business side of things, but they still have a lot, to do. And I think our industry just teaches you to just keep going, keep going, keep going. And the fact that you're always being watched, you're always being judged, you're always being compared to somebody else. And I think that's just the things for me, the comparison, the perfectionism, all of that stuff is where I think if that was removed, how much more joy would we get out of it, our industry? How much more would we enjoy what we do rather than having being bogged down with the stress of it as well? And a lot of the stress that is there, and I know some people might go, oh, that's a bit harsh, but we do it to ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, we
Nobody's
do.
asking us to do this. Nobody's saying that that parent needs to be messaged at 10 o'clock at night. We do that to ourselves because it's learned behavior. It's what we feel is expected of us from the industry. Literally had, and I know she won't mind me saying this, but Sophie literally and Stacey, we got a little WhatsApp group with obviously because we've got a thing coming out today on radio. So she messaged to say last night, and then it was 11:30, and then she put a message saying Kim's going to shout at us for working at 11:30 in the evening. Well, I didn't see it because I was asleep until I got up at 6 o'clock this morning to go to the gym, and I put you're damn right, tut tut, because it's just like again, like, but I love the fact they're really aware of it, but it's just the norm, and I want that to be not the
And it is
norm.
that awareness, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
learning, actually I'm tired, I need a rest. Or,
Yeah.
I'm a massive fan of a nap. I
Oh, I
love an
wish I
afternoon.
was.
I love an
I can't
afternoon nap.
nap. I can't do nanny naps. I wish I could. I just,
Oh,
yeah, my brain won't allow me to.
no, I
So,
absolutely love a
yeah.
nap, and that really helps me. I can just
Yeah,
have,
just
I mean,
reboots.
Rob, my husband, really laughs because he's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you can just literally sleep for 20 minutes and then you'll be like, "Ding, back to go again." But I really, really love that. And again, I think probably before I met you and followed you on your socials and had you in my school and, we kind of became friends, I wouldn't have thought that that was okay and allowed to do. But
Oh,
actually, I
absolutely.
allow myself to do that
Yeah.
now.
Yeah,
Actually, if
because
I
if
need a
you're,
nap, I need a nap. I worked till
yeah,
God knows what time last night. It's
and if
important.
your
So,
nervous system is saying to you, I need this sleep right now, then you need to listen to it. And I think that's what we don't do. So much of us, we disconnect from what our body's asking of us because we've had that mentality of push through an injury, push through an illness, just push through. So even when we're tired and your body's screaming, I really need a nap, we go, no, it's fine, just push through it. Because we're so used to that, we don't listen to our nervous system. We don't listen to what our body needs. So if you're able to kind of go, yeah, I'm gonna have a 20-minute nap, I'm just jealous. I can't nap. It takes me 20 it takes me 20 minutes, Shelley, to get comfortable in a chair or the bed, let alone have a nap. I'm like, by the time I've done 20 minutes, I'm like, oh, I might as well just get up now. I've not even slept.
I can literally lay down and be like, boom, that's it.
Oh, it's so annoying. My
I love
husband does
that.
that.
So the college
Yeah.
opens in September, is that right?
Yes.
Obviously, I've got
Yes, it
Sophie
does.
coming on in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So what, kind of business strategies and stuff like that, how are you kind of getting involved with that? Or is it very much just the mindfulness and the wellness side of things? How is that all
Yeah.
working?
So obviously, like I'm fully aware of, how they're running and what's going on behind the scenes, but this is Sophie and Stacey's kind of, new baby.
And
And
what's
I'm
the
just
school
really
called?
It is Sophie D College of Performing Arts. So yeah,
Lovely.
because obviously she's kept it in her building. She's got the most beautiful building with
I know
gorgeous
she has,
studios.
yeah.
So obviously she wanted to kind of keep it within the same facilities. And it just felt like she said it was a natural kind of way to, obviously
Utilize the
SDC,
studios, yeah.
yeah, to utilize the studio and keep the kind of branding. But they are very separate. But obviously, because a lot of the students that have already auditioned aren't her own dancers, they've come from multiple other places. But for me, it was really about connecting with Sophie and Stacey and showing them what I could provide. And I think what started out as a conversation of maybe doing a little bit of work with them quickly became this could be embedded. And that was, I kind of said, I want this embedded. It's To me, consistency is key. And that's something I teach everyone that I work with, clients, adults, children. You can't just dip in and out of doing a little bit of mental well-being work. It has to be like the white noise in the background. It has to be consistent all the time. For our brains to, obviously, we can get down the sciencey place, but for our neuro pathways, our brains to start forming new patterns. So if it's drip fed every single week, I know that the work that I will deliver will be powerful enough to hopefully in 2 years really start to form new neuro pathways for them to be more positive about themselves, to have a better outlook about the industry, and to have more resilience and stand up for themselves and be counted and have a voice and say, this is not okay, or I have a boundary, you're crossing it. Like, I want that. But if I was doing it sporadically, it wouldn't land. So it quickly
Yeah.
became this needs to be part of the curriculum. So I'm sure Sophie will dive into more about the curriculum side, but my work will be consistent. As I say, they'll have a weekly lesson, but then we're also offering the students, well, it's not an offer, it's part of their training. They will have a one-to-one with me every term. So it's just a way of me and that
Wow.
one student having a one-to-one lesson where we just a bit like a counseling session, I suppose,
Yeah.
where they can trust me, they'll build up some trust with me, where if they are struggling, then obviously that's where my now expertise, my training, my own experiences, that will come into play, that I can support them one to one. Obviously, all the safeguarding elements will be there. We've got safeguarding officers, so all of that is in place. And when I went up in January for the audition day, I got to meet a lot of the students that were auditioning that day, and a couple of students that had already accepted their offer, but they came back as a way of just kind of another day of being at the studios and meeting the tutors again. And I got talking to a lot of the parents, and the feedback that we've had from the parents saying, "This is amazing. I feel so good knowing that my child is
Yeah.
getting this on a weekly basis, and they're getting this thread of mental health, mental well-being, physical well-being. Like, this is an actual thing. It's not just a little pocket now and again, because
Or a
and
box ticking
or
exercise
a
like
box
some
tick, and that's
colleges.
what a
Yeah.
lot of the colleges do. And I
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
again, I know I'm going to be controversial in saying this, but I think, if people don't like what I'm saying, then I often think to myself, well, why has that hurt you so much? You need to take a bit of a look internally. But
Mm.
there are a lot of institutes, colleges that are ticking it and going, oh, we look after their well-being, and we offer pastoral care, but the pastoral carer is another teacher. Well, you can't go into a jazz class or ballet class, having just disclosed perhaps like some of your emotions to them, and then you're seeing them in a ballet class. It doesn't work. You need
Yeah.
someone who's
It
completely
needs,
external.
absolutely.
Yeah, which is why my involvement with the dance side of things will be nothing. I won't get involved. I'm purely there as guest, you can use the word pastoral carer, but just someone that is going to be that emotional support for them, that is going to teach them these beautiful tools that they're going to need.
So will that role
Yeah, we're
be a
super excited.
full-time role, Kim, or will you still
Yeah.
do the Butterfly Mind workshops as
Oh,
well? Or
absolutely
yeah,
separate. Yeah. So obviously what I'll be offering with the college will be very separate, because obviously the butterfly mind in itself is taking on legs, and it's
yeah,
really starting to move. And this year, I think, unbeknown to me, I said it organically a couple of weeks ago, that I have got a bigger mission that I'm on now with the butterfly mind. But I've been holding myself back because I think, having my own dance school, I didn't want to be able to ruffle those feathers and then have my dance school's name be tainted. And I did not want my teachers that were freelance teachers for me to have any involvement if I caused controversy. But
yeah.
I didn't want them to have any sort of mud stick to them. But weirdly, now I kind of feel like I'm ready to take on the world, and I'm ready to sort of start taking on the dance industry on a bigger capacity and start saying, this is not okay. So
Yeah,
this year, I'm really
fantastic.
stepping out of my comfort zone, I guess, to kind of put it out there now, to start saying, we need to start looking at the people that are not insured, that are not trained, that are not, that don't have all the legal requirements, that are opening up dance schools left, right, and centre. We need
Mm,
an independent governing body that all of us have to, like you do if you run a nursery nurse or a primary school or any educational setting. You are Ofsted. I'm not
I
saying we
think
need
that could
Ofsted, but we need a governing body that's independent,
stop
that we
the
absolutely.
injuries and the kind of students that we often get from other schools coming to us where, they've been badly taught or,
Absolutely.
they've been told that, they're not good enough or, and then we spend 18 months building that child back up again. But
But
that's
the
a
damage is already done. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. And that's
yeah,
a whole nother podcast. And we've come to the
absolutely.
end of our session. Kim, honestly, it's funny actually. Every podcaster that I've had on, everybody that I've had on as a guest, I've gone, we could do two or three of these. And we
I
absolutely
know.
could. We really, really could with this one because,
Yeah.
there's so many powerful discussions we can have. And
Oh,
it has
yeah.
been so lovely. And I just want to say thank you to you because I remember seeing you at a conference a couple of years ago and I just thought you just had such a lovely energy about you. And I remember going over and you talked about, and this is quite a nice thing that you don't, I don't know if you know about that we've implemented, which was an idea of yours. And you had this really lovely idea in your school where students collected little badges and they had
Yeah.
lanyards I should have actually got one of Ayana's. And some of the kids are like on their third lanyard now, and they've got all these
Amazing.
badges, and they come in, and that was actually a really lovely idea that you shared, that I implemented from you. So thank
Amazing.
you for that lovely
You're
idea. The kids
welcome.
will love you even more because they love a badge. It's
Bless them.
all
Yeah.
about the badges at my school.
Of course.
But yeah, thank you so much for your time. It was such a pleasure
You're
having you
welcome.
on, and best of luck with the Sophie D Performing Arts and
Thank
with
you.
the butterfly mind going on to bigger and better things. I'm sure you're going to be just as successful as you were in your school.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure as always. We could talk for days.
We could. Take care, my darling. Thanks so much,
Thank you.
Kim.
Thank you, my lovely.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Treading the Boards to Business. We hope we added some sparkle to your day. Please like, subscribe and share our channel. And if you know of any lovelies who may want to share their story, do get in touch. We hope the rest of your day is filled with glamour and glitter.